Hello and welcome to The Beat, a news and talk program brought to you by the Center for Community Media at Worcester State University. I'm your host, Liam Carmody, and today I'll be interviewing actor, singer, and voice teacher Steve Gagliastro. All right, Steve, thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me, Liam.
No problem. So how did you get your start in the musical theater realm, per se?
I started performing probably in like 5th, 6th grade, like middle school or leading into middle school. I went to Worcester. I'm a Worcester kid. I went to Rice Square School, Worcester East Middle School, and Holy Name, and UMass. So I sort of stayed to Massachusetts for my education. When I was younger, in the Worcester Public Schools, there was a program called PEAK. It was called Providing Enrichment for Able Kids. So I was an early reader, and so I could take a little more on my plate than sort of the average kid, I guess. And my sister was in this program as well. And so I would be taken out of class for, say, reading period and going giving a little heavier dose of reading when I was in, say, 2nd grade. In 4th, 5th, and 6th grade, they would actually take you and put you in different schools. The funny story is they would take 3 or 4 of us kids and stick us in a red cab, and we would go from Rice Square School over to another school, or to the Worcester Craft Center, or to Higgins Armory. And some of those were early theater classes. Lee Hench, I remember, was one of the folks who did that. I forget Mr. Daly's first name, but he was also involved. So that was the early start in theater, and we did some music with them. And then again, when I got to middle school, Paula DeLuca was the music director at Worcester East Middle School, and so she used to put on a show, this review every year. It was sort of like a Broadway review. And so I did that for a couple of years. When I got to Holy Name High School, Rick Booth ran the theater there, and it was the first year I did an actual musical, a real, true musical. And so that was, I guess you could say, my real start in musical theater was with Rick Booth at Holy Name. I didn't audition for the play. We were doing Fiddler on the Roof.
Classic.
And it was a really great production. And a lot of my friends were in it, so I was like, oh, well, this will be all right. And I wasn't playing any sports in the spring. And I said to the director, I said, if there's a part, because there was a small part that came up, and I was going to play this small part, and then someone had to drop just a few weeks in, because I think it was because of grades or something to that extent, so keep your grades up, and you get to stay in the play. And so this small part opened up for me, and so I took this part. It was great, and it was a wonderful experience to do a show with, at that time, probably 60 or 70 other people on that Holy Name stage. We did Fiddler on the Roof, and I did theater through there, so that's my start in musical theater, and then it's been all downhill from there.
I wouldn't necessarily say downhill.
Well, it's a bumpy ride, as I explained to people. When you look back at your career when you're a performer, a lot of time, or in any career, I guess, you look back and it's like a brick wall, and like a nice stone wall between farm properties or something. And every gig is a stone. Sometimes it's a small stone, sometimes it's one of those stones you stick in to sort of shore up the wall, and sometimes it's a big cornerstone. And then you just keep building this wall, and you keep going forward and building the wall behind you, and every once in a while you look back and you say, that's a pretty good wall, Yeah. Some of those stones are very small, and it took a while to build that section. That was a slow section there, or the stone isn't as good a quality. But you look back and you realize I built quite a wall. Again, that's how I sort of look at my career.
Oh, nice. All right, so how long have you been doing theater professionally, and what are some notable productions, whether local, regional, or international, that you've taken part in?
Let's see. Again, my professional start would have to be, I'd say, the Foothills Theater. I was always singing around. I actually started as a professional singer doing church work, doing cantor work for the Diocese of Worcester all around. I still do it. I've been doing it now for over 30 years. I had a service yesterday morning in Leicester. So I've been doing that for a long, long time, and sort of, I guess, that's my first paid professional jobs were singing. I had got a degree in music education from UMass Amherst. I studied trombone with Dave Sporny. I studied voice with Dorothy Ernest and Dr. Horace Boyer, and various other people who were really fantastic. And so I went out into the public schools to teach, actually, right out of college, and I was able to get a job in the school system where I student taught at the Northborough-Southborough Regional System, Algonquin Regional High School, and the middle schools and elementary schools. I was actually an elementary music teacher for about 2 years. part-time, about half-time. Dennis Wren, who's my mentor and good friend, who passed away, a little over 10 years ago now.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Real good guy, real connector, one of those people that you always go, hey, you got this, hey, can I borrow 20 stands? Hey, Dennis, can I borrow your glockenspiel? Hey, Dennis, you got crotales that the percussionists can use for this brush? Yeah, and he sort of have everything, so he would let people use, and people would come to him for, hey, do you know someone who could fill this gig? So I went to him, and I was his assistant for a couple of years, and while I was doing that, I started doing theater again. I had sort of stopped doing theater in college to concentrate on music specifically. And I started doing theater again and reminded myself just how much I really liked theater. And I was starting to do things in the summer and starting to do the children's theater at the Worcester Foothills with Jack Neary and a lot of other folks. Brad Kenny was the artistic director then. And so I started doing the theater at the Foothills and really started hanging out there quite a bit and seeing the productions, the equity productions that were going by, and not saying, oh, that person's no good, but saying, I can do that. I feel as though I'm as good as these people. I think I can hang with them, so to speak. And so I left my teaching job in 2003 to pursue, one of the nice things about the contract is I achieved professional status. So I had 3 years in, and they were going to hire me on for another 4th year. And so it's sort of like tenure. And so with that comes a sabbatical. You can take up to 2 years sabbatical. I mean, most people push it off to to later in the career, or they want to finish a degree, or they want to explore some subject or somewhere deeper and actually like leave the area to go either Europe or just somewhere in the United States. And so what I did is I sort of front loaded and I took these 2 years right away, sort of as a safety net to say if this doesn't work out, if I pursue full-time performing, I can go back to teaching and my job will sort of be there. Maybe not the same fashion if there's some changes in the budget and changes in the structure of the school. So and Dennis was great. He understood. He was like, go man, go. He had this great voice. And so I left, with his blessing, knowing that safety net was there, and him, I'm sure, knowing he's never coming back, and it's true. So that was about 2003 that I left teaching to pursue full-time performing, theater, eventually film, television, and sort of everything under the sun now. And here I am. And I've continued to teach all the way through, sort of sporadically, but I haven't had a sort of sit-down job since 2004 or 5. I taught at Joy and Warren Dance Studio for a couple of years. I taught voice there as well, and at Holy Name High School before it became St. Paul's. So I've always been teaching, but this is the last 2.5 years. I started here just at the beginning of the pandemic in 2021, in the first full semester of the pandemic. In fact, my first year, if you recall. But as far as notable theatrical things, again, I'm involved with the Hanover Theater's production of Christmas Carol.
We're going to get to that as well.
We'll get to that. But on top of that, I'd say some of my largest credits, one of my biggest credits is I was fortunate enough to go overseas in about 2009, 8 and 9. For the better part of a year, I toured with Cinderella through Broadway Asia, who I'd worked with before. But one of the nice things, it was a sanctioned production by Roger and Hammerstein, Mark Waldrop, who's a really fine director, actor, and writer. He rewrote the script, and it was a really nice version of it. And our lead was Lea Salonga, who people know as the original Kim in My Saigon. She was the voice of the singing voice of Jasmine in Aladdin, I believe Mulan as well. She was more recently she was in that very acclaimed production of Once on This Island on Broadway. Yeah. Just really fantastic. Good person, really great singer. Really talk about an example of someone who's really consistent and just you could set your watch by her. Even them days, remember there was a time they were in Hong Kong and she picked up a little sniffle or something, and you could hear her speaking voice when you're chatting with her, but on stage she just really nails, and just a nice person to boot. And she was sort of on those type of tours and those type of productions, it's all a trickle down from the top. So if you have a celebrity or a star with you and they're great, it's just a full tree from the star on down. Whereas sometimes if you get some of the leads aren't getting along or something, it sort of can make the rest of the production seem uneven and a little wonky. But it was really, she's a great example to all of us, and it was a really nice production. I've toured overseas a few times randomly. I did, in 2004, I did a touring production of Cabaret, which was the Studio 54 version. Nice. This was directed by B.T. McNichol. And I'd done a couple of regional productions, both at the Algonquin Playhouse and here at the Worcester Foothills, where we actually, it's the version where the pit is the ensemble. So the Kit Kat boys and girls play the instruments. And as a trombone player, I was able to do that. I also did one of the things people ask me about the most. I saved this one for last. I did with the same company, Broadway Asia and Nickelodeon. In 2007, I did SpongeBob SquarePants, the musical live. It was the sponge who could fly. So all of you out there who remember SpongeBob, there was a half-hour-long episode. Normally they were 15-minute segments, but this was a full half-hour episode called "The Sponge Who Could Fly," and it has to do with him getting these inflatable pants. Somehow his pants inflate, and he's able to fly, and he does all this good, and he thinks he's going to, almost like a superhero, take care of the neighborhood. But of course, things go awry. So they spun that into a full-length production, not the production that was on Broadway recently in the late 2019, 18, in that area, maybe a little earlier. Completely different production. And we toured for a very short time. It was sort of, we were in Southeast Asia, Malaysia, and Singapore, and Indonesia. And at that time, it was precipitous to the U.S. market sort of collapsing at that time. The Asian market sort of had collapsed, the Nikkei, and that was precipitous to that. So people didn't have extra money, and they just sort of, the production didn't get off its feet too much. That's why you don't hear about it. But if you go online, if you look on YouTube, it's actually there. The music is by Eben Schletter, who wrote the music for the episode. So,
oh, nice.
That was some of my notable things I did.
All right. Speaking of touring, can you describe what it's like being on the road with a show as part of a company, traveling from location to location, performing for a wide variety of audiences? Sure.
I'll talk about the main U.S. tour I did. It was U.S. and Canada. I did the Buddy Holly story about 2013. That was interesting because a lot of those folks I knew going into it, so it was actually really nice to have that sort of, some really close friends to go on the road with, because Buddy Holly is one of those shows that people do a lot because it's a good show to do for a theater. It usually sells well. It's, not easy to put up. It's sort of pre-assembled. It's like getting a puzzle where there's a big section that's all together out of the box, and you go, I'll just put that down there, and you don't take it apart. So Buddy Holly comes like that because you hire someone, not only hiring actor, musician, you're getting them, they've played 6 different parts, so you got instant covers. But anyways, being on the road with that was sort of instant family. We sort of knew each other, and we knew, there wasn't awkwardness, hey, let's feel each other out. It's like, oh, I know you, and we got to know the rest of the people. What happens on the road is it's a job. You have to treat it like that. When you get on the road, there's things like, most of the time you're not going to have a kitchen, so you have to make do. So even though you're making a certain amount of money, you realize that a certain amount of that money is going to have to go towards meals, and you're going to eat out, I would say 90+% of the time, maybe even more than that, unless you have like a hot plate or something, or get yourself sort of instant noodles. There's some people who can do wonders with a single burner and some utensils that they always pack with them. People are really on the road quite a bit. That goes when you're also regionally too. You'll find it's like when you pay $6 for a water at an amusement park, but you wouldn't pay $6 for a 32-pack at the store. You know what I mean? No. So it's about where you are. So it's like, well, I'm on the road. I need a whatever. I'll buy it here and I'll leave it at the city. So the sort of things become a little more disposable in that way, and you have to watch your purse strings to make sure you come out and it's like, well, I was able to live somewhere for a year or two, however long your tour is, but then you're like, oh, but I wasn't able to save because of that sort of thing. Find normalcy on the road. Treat it like it's a real job, and you got to take care of your health because you got 8 shows a week or 6 shows a week, and travel on top of that. You're usually traveling minimum once a week. Every once in a while you'll sit down for 2 weeks, but usually it's once a week. Every once in a while you have a half week. And the cool thing is, if you sit down somewhere for a while, I was able to sit down with in Tokyo for like 3 or 4 weeks with Cabaret when I went. So you really got to go out to
explore the city.
Yeah, you get to explore the city, and you get to explore the area. And so you become a traveler, and so you find, figure out what days you can do things. We were in Korea for Cabaret as well, and so we got to go to like the DMZ, like the border of North Korea for a trip. And it's, so you get to see these things. I have a picture of me, drinking a Sing Sao on the top of the Great Wall of China. So nice. I didn't sort of ask to go to those places, but I was invited to, and you make the most of it. And it's so you really can see the world on someone else's dime on the road. But again, you have to watch your pennies and watch your health and make sure you eat as well as you can. And as long as everybody gets along, tour is as good as the people in it. It's like a dinner party. B.T. McNichol, who I referred to earlier, really fine director. He was one of Rob Marshall's assistants. He now runs or was running recently the La Mirada Theater out in California. I think he's still doing that. Really one of the finest directors I work with. He talked about putting a tour together, especially putting a long run. He said it's like putting a dinner party together. You know, you look around the table, and it's all people that you don't mind spending time with, because you're going to be spending a lot of time with these people. People you can depend on. People, as he always said, one of the best pieces of advice was, especially when it comes to being an actor, tend your own garden. If you take care of your lines, your motivation, your character, your showing up on time, you learning your lines, you doing your thing. If everybody does that, nobody has to worry about you, and you don't have to, give people notes or take notes from other people. Just tend your garden, and everything will work out if everyone does. Yeah.
Can you describe the feeling of performing in a musical live on stage, right in front of the audience?
It's funny because I've been doing it for sort of a really long time. I think my first time I was on stage saying lines, I said in that program in 5th grade with the Peak program.
Yeah.
So it's been a long time since I've been on stage, and so not that I've lost that spark, but it's sort of it feels like a comfortable jacket that once was like this really sort of expensive jacket that, wow, this feels really great. And you sort of get used to it, I still get nervous every once in a while, especially with a new show that I haven't done a lot. These days I'm doing, like for example, Buddy Holly. I've done Buddy Holly probably conservatively 15 or 16 different productions of it. So I'm able to slip in there, and am I doing this track or that track? Oh, I'm playing that guy. Am I doing okay, all right, no problem. And so you sort of get into a mode, and so you don't get nervous because you're prepared. Preparation, they say, preparation plus opportunity, or luck is preparation plus opportunity. Being comfortable on stage, or stage fright is, ill preparedness, I think, usually. Every once in a while you get nervous just because you take in the gravity of everything.
Yeah.
But for me, when I stand out there, especially when I'm well prepared, I'm reminded of the impact you have on people, especially when it's someone who's never seen either that particular piece before, somebody who's never heard those lines before, somebody who's never seen theater before, and you realize that you have this power to mesmerize them, to transport the audience member to a different time, a different place. Again, speaking of Buddy Holly, we have these people coming in who are these sort of baby boomers who grew up with Buddy Holly and were 17 when Buddy was 19 and passed away. 22 when he passed away. And so they come and they see Buddy Holly, and it's the last half hour of the show is a recreation of the final concert. And they're transported. They talk about the fact that they get up and they stand up and they're clapping at the end. They're not feeling that achy knee. They're not feeling that back. They're literally, there's an endorphin rush. It's not to say it's a drug, but it's literally, it's medicinal in that way. They literally get this rush. I mean, it might even be adrenaline that's just, and you whip it, and the show sort of is built to sort of whip you into a frenzy and then cut the legs out from underneath you, and then they come at it, and it's just whoosh. Jersey Boys does a really good job of that. I've not done that show, but good friends have, and I've seen it a lot. They really know how to whip that audience into a frenzy, and so to know that you have the ability to sort of stir that pot and make it frothy and big, and people just go crazy. So you literally feel in those times that you have a serious effect on people's lives, even if it's just for 5 minutes and 10 minutes, 20 minutes the rest of that day, and it may fade away. They can always remember it. But even if they don't, you have literally had an impact on those people's lives. So that's what I try and remember if I'm not reaching for my lines.
Yeah, it's a very powerful thing. I know firsthand. So you've been involved with the Hanover Theater and their annual production of A Christmas Carol, among other things they do. How did you become associated with the Hanover, and what is your role with them?
I started with them, I just auditioned. So the history of the show is this is 2022, so we're in our 15th year of the production. One of the years, 2 years ago, was because of the pandemic, we couldn't have a full production, so we taped a smaller version at the Brick Box, the JMAC Theater in Worcester. So there was 1 year where it was taped John Stimson of sort of Worcester fame and beyond, a great filmmaker, really great guy. We did a smaller version of that. So it started 15 years ago. The first production I was not in and my wife was not in. It's a Troy Siebel's adaptation of A Christmas Carol. Tim Evans is the music supervisor and the music director, and he actually plays and still plays organ for the show, and he was the one who assembled a lot of the music, or the music and put it together. So I make sure I give credit to them for starting this great tradition. So the first year I was not in it, my wife was not in it. I was actually overseas. I was on tour with, I think, Cinderella at the time. So I wasn't. I was in Thailand the first Christmas. The next Christmas, my wife actually auditioned for them, but I had been asked, and I auditioned for. I was doing a child's Christmas in Wales, tongue twister, Dylan Thomas piece in Boston, and so I came to see her show. And of course, you know, it was a hall. It was out to Boston, so I was going into Boston.
Yeah.
You know, down to the Boston Center for the Arts. You know, and it's a lot easier commute to go downtown. I live in Worcester than it is to go to Boston. So I came to see the show. My wife was in the second year of it, and it blew me away. Loved it. I was sold from the beginning, but the thing that said I need to be in the show was at the opening of Act 2. The gentlemen in the show do Boar's Head, which is really great. It's this sort of masculine presentation of the boar's head, and it's a very, very old song, and it was just this great production of it. And I said, that's for me. I'm gonna.
Yeah.
And they wanted to do the Child's Christmas in Wales. In fact, they did it again the following year, and they were already saying, hey, you can come back, like really early. And I was like, well, I'm going to audition for this one production. I'm not going to audition all over, because we were in and out of New York and in and out of all over the place. My wife Annie Cairns is an actress too. So Annie did the show the second year. Into the third year, and she was asked back for the third year, and so I said, I'm just going to audition for this one show. I'm not going to audition around, and if I book it, it's in my hometown, it's a bigger paycheck, all the things, and so they're like, okay, so I auditioned, I ended up booking it, and I've been in the production ever since. I started as Mr. Fezziwig, I continue as Mr. Fezziwig. I'll be Mr. Fezziwig this year. My wife Annie, who played Mrs. Cratchit for many years, it plays my wife now, Mrs. Fezziwig. We've grown in role behind the scenes too. We help with the casting. We're also the associate director of the production. So Troy Siebel still directs. Myself and Annie are the associate directors. She's also the associate choreographer. She teaches the dance. I'm the associate music director. I teach the music. So we're in Worcester too. You know, we always tried to lend an extra hand in the production. It sort of naturally led to us doing that. So that's where we are now.
Nice. So in addition to theater, you've also done some film and TV work too. You've been in movies such as American Hustle, Don't Look Up, Ted 2, and the recently released, by hopefully the time this episode goes live, Spirited. What have been some of your favorite projects you've been in, and also how is being in front of the camera different from being on stage in front of a live audience?
The difference between camera and stage is size, is economy. You know, because it's so close, and if they're going to get close to you and they're seeing your face, you know, I don't have to make a big expression that if I'm trying to hit the back of a 2,000-seat house, I need to start from here and bring it up, and like the energy just has to flow for me, because it's actually someone's watching you at this big, and it's just
kind of overacting in a sense.
You have to, especially, you know, in a small house you don't have to, but acting is also meant to be, you know, even when it's supposed to be realistic, it's supposed to be a little bit heightened. Whereas television is more reality, more based in, you know, a look is a, you know, the head doesn't move, but the eyes do everything. You know, if you watch really good actors, they just don't move very much, and it's all like their head doesn't move, but their eyes do everything. It's something. That's funny. You talk about Brad Pitt, who I think is a fine actor, really good actor. He's always sort of, there's a joke that he's always eating or doing something like that in all his movies. It's that way. He's just doing something, and he's able to do something, and it's natural. And you know, and he's not having to sit there and sort of, what do I do with my hand? You know, the famous Will Ferrell. You know, I don't know what to do with my hands in Talladega Nights. So if he's doing something, it's sort of like, you know, he doesn't have to think about it if he's either smoking a cigarette or eating an apple or a sandwich or something. But yeah, it's really about the size. In film, it's all about sort of look. In theater, you know, you're usually far away, and you sort of resemble the character. The more you do, we can throw a wig on you and a thing, and oh, there you are. Put a mustache on. There you go. You're the character. Whereas up close, you know, they may forego more seasoned not necessarily talented actors, more seasoned actors that have, you know, more proven actors for someone like you. I like your face. Yeah. You have a funny face. You have the right face, or you have the face that I see in my brain as a director. So it's not always talent oriented. In theater, it's sort of hard to make a living if you aren't talented. Yeah. You only get so far. Where in film, you can frankly have sort of minimal talent but have a good look. And you can learn film. No, you can learn film as a technical thing. You can learn it like, paper folding in that way, origami in a way where if you follow directions and follow this, you can sort of be a film or television actor. If you learn some things like, look away, or, just think body language things. You can sort of learn the skill set to be a TV or film actor, where it's really difficult to not have talent and be a theater actor.
Okay, cool.
And succeed anyway.
Yeah. So if anyone's watching this that wants to get into like the singing or acting world, what advice would you give that you've personally learned from your career so far?
The first thing I would say is go and do it. Do it. Find an audition, go out and do it tomorrow, the next day, whatever. Find and commit to and find something that fits in your schedule, and then you can do. There's nothing like getting on your feet. I went to school for music and music education. Yeah, I was always performing and doing theater, and I had a sort of natural talent. I was very lucky where I was able to absorb things from directors. So I had some really fine directors who I learned a lot of good skills from, and so I learned sort of on the job, almost like if someone becomes a journey person on the job, like immediately, or becomes an apprentice and goes right into say an electric field or into plumbing or something to that extent. That's a little less education and more like I can teach you right here. I sort of felt as though I went through the blue collar theatrical method. I always studied, took some classes here and there, but like my wife has a degree in English and musical theater performance from the Hart School. Again, I didn't have that sort of formal education, but I was able to work with really good directors. So I would say get out there and get on your feet and do it. And there's some really good programs for people who are just starting out. I know that Libby Scanlon at the JMAC, she's the artistic director and manager of the space there as well. And she has a program that people who are, especially with Shakespeare, but people who have not acted before, who get a chance to do Shakespeare. So she actually got, I think, a nice grant recently. So there's some opportunities for folks here in Worcester to get out and do it. So you also have to have a fire underneath you, because no one can do it for you. No one can tell you got to get out of bed at 10:04 a.m. to make sure that you're showered and ready to go and have your headshots cropped and cut and printed out so you can drive to New York if you don't live in New York. My wife and I often would do that. Drive down either to the city directly, drive down to Milford, Connecticut, take the train in from there, and be able to be there in line at 7 o'clock or so, just to make sure that you can get seen that day.
Yeah.
We did that for a long time, and we built our walls, we built our careers up, and so people look at your wall and they say, yeah, good job, you've done that. So it's really a self-motivating type of thing. No one can do that audition for you. No one can, sometimes it's like, oh, it's 11:30 at night. It's like, oh, I forgot to do that audition for that commercial. Okay, let's do it. Get it together, and boom. Like, no one's going to motivate you. It's a self-motivation. No one's going to light a fire under you. You'll just fade. No one.
Yeah.
There's too many people in the business, and too many hungry people who, talented or not, sometimes hunger goes a long way in this business. Again, if you can learn that skill set in film and TV, like it's a set of directions, you can do all right if you're hungry enough.
Finally, if there are any community members watching that are interested in voice lessons, how would they go about it?
I only teach voice here at the university, so they would have to enroll into the university and go through the VAPA program. Those who are at the university or enrolling or considering enrolling, what you do is you actually put a short tape together. It doesn't have to be more than a minute or so. Preferably with accompaniment. Just shows you singing. I want to make sure that you can how well you match pitch and how you sound, and if we do have a standard here to make sure that we sort of raise the bar and continually do so. So it's just sort of it's an audition, and it's not American Idol where you're going to have to be competing against everyone. It's just everyone here at the university, and and there's usually enough room for people to take lessons. So just sign up and audition. But yeah, you have to, I don't teach elsewhere. You have to be a student at the university,
be here at Worcester State,
even if you're just doing voice lessons.
All right. Well, Steve, thank you so much for coming on. It was a pleasure.
Thanks, Liam. Thanks for having me.
No problem. Thank you for watching this segment of The Beat. Please remember to follow us on our social media accounts. We'll see you next time.